John Anderton is the one less traveled. Make sure you follow
Good evening. You can move the old-fashioned John Anderton. Provides gourmet cuisine. John Anderton. You can use a Guinness right about now.
That was a clip from Minority Report showing sort of their idea of what advertisement might be like in the future. And so what was in that little clip? Well, first of all, there was targeting, right? All the ads spliced John Anderton's name into them. There was identification and positive identification through eye scans. So we do targeting now, and we do eye scans now. We don't do eye scans in the distance like they show there, but we do sort of do that thing. So in the rest of this lecture, we're going to walk through some of what I've seen as the major components of advertising, and then end up focusing in on Google to see how is Google dealing with advertising. And then at the very end, we'll come back to that clip on Minority Report and talk about that clip in the context of some of the things that maybe we've learned since the beginning of this lecture. Well, let's kick off by talking in general about ads and information, and I want to give you this perspective. What you're looking for when you consume things, especially on the web or through social media or on your mobile device or wherever, is you're looking for some form of information. And that information is working for you in some way. It's entertaining you, it's enlightening you, giving you a new understanding of something, it's creating an emotion in you. There's some reason that you want it, there's some reason that you crave this information and you're willing to spend your time consuming it. On the other hand, what do advertisers want? Well, first and foremost, they want your attention. They want you to know about them. They want you to pay attention to them. They want to persuade you of something. They want to show you that their product is really superior, or that you have a need for their product, or that their product will provide you with something that you don't already have, in some way get you to want to have them. And then finally, they want you to take action, right? They want you to do something. They want you to buy their product. They want you to believe what they're advertising, if it's a political advertisement or something like that. So here's the balance. You're trading your desire for entertainment, enlightenment, and some sort of emotional response for your attention, for your belief in, or your possible belief, at least they want you to believe in what they're selling, and to actually buy into it, to actually accept it if it's an opinion, or buy it if it's a product. So let's move forward from there. So is advertising good or bad? Well, I'm not going to give you an opinion because I don't know, to tell you the truth, whether advertising is good or bad. Advertising just is. But I can kind of lay out some of the issues, and I can kind of lay out some of the foundation of why you might consider it to be good or bad. And so on the pro side, probably the thing that people point to most about being the good thing about advertising is that they're paying. Right? You get a tremendous amount of value. We've talked about this before. A tremendous amount of value, and all it costs you is your attention and the possibility that you might be persuaded. It does cost your attention. You definitely have to pay attention to advertisements because that's the way they're constructed. On the other hand, you don't have to be persuaded. In fact, they can persuade you of the opposite. Watching an advertisement can persuade you that you never want to have a particular product, or you never want to have a particular belief. So anyway, one of the things that is undoubtedly a positive benefit of advertising is that they're spending a tremendous amount of money to bring you content that you wouldn't otherwise be able to pay for, or that you at least otherwise would have to pay for. So you can ignore the advertising, right? And in fact, I'm sure we're all trained. I'm certainly trained, and so are you, I'm sure, to ignore a certain amount of advertising, even though it's trying to grab your attention. And there's always an escalating battle for the next technique to grab your attention, the next way to make sure that you actually have to pay attention. And then people see that technique, they recognize that that technique is going on, and then they find selective ways of blocking that advertising. There's also the argument that the stuff that's being advertised to you is stuff that you actually might want. And the more targeted the advertisement, the more possibility there is that that advertiser is actually finding what in fact the advertiser wants, which is people who, of all the people in the world, the people who most want their product. So when an advertisement is perfectly targeted, think about it this way. If it was perfectly targeted, what would that mean? That would mean that the advertisement is landing in front of the eyes of somebody who really needs that product and is ready and willing to purchase it right now. That's perfect for them as well, right? That's ultimate targeting. And at that point, isn't it okay for you? You need the thing. It's the right thing for you at the right moment. You're ready to buy the thing, and there it shows up in front of your face. Isn't that what you kind of want as well? So that's another argument in favor of advertising, that the better it gets and the more targeted it gets, the more likely it is to find you at the right moment when you as well want to have that product. And then finally, Advertisement is entertaining. I don't know about you, but my head is full of jingles and little commercial things that I've seen and banners that I've seen and all that kind of stuff that has just kind of, entertained me. It's enlightened me, or it's given me an emotional response, whatever. It kind of has become the information. And so, in some ways, I'd like to consume that as well. And so there's an argument in favor of advertising. So let's look at some of the arguments opposed to advertising. First of all, and probably the thing that people say the most, is that it's manipulative. It doesn't only show you needs that you already have, it creates needs in you, it manipulates you, it shows you, it shows you sex, or it shows you status, or it shows you something else, and it pretends to give you those things even though the thing that is being advertised isn't going to give you that at all. So there's a big argument opposed to advertising. It makes you buy stuff. Another argument that people say, I wouldn't have bought that bag of chips except I saw the potato chip commercial over and over again, or I wouldn't be drinking Coke except that they've slammed their message into my head, and every time I look at the the display of cans of pop, Coke just jumps out because they made me do it. It trashes objectivity. Here's another really big argument against advertising, is that it sways what's going on in the content that's being shown, and we'll see this a lot later, where the advertisement actually merges with the content, and in some way sort of affects the content. And it's been a charge that's leveled against newspapers forever, that the advertisers censor what's in the newspaper, and if it's not positive towards the advertisers, they pull their money, and if they pull their money, then there's no newspaper. So and it goes for everything as well. Anything that's sponsored, the sponsor has some say in the editorial content that's being presented. And so there's an argument against advertising. Do you really want Coca-Cola to decide what goes on the news? That's the argument. And then finally, it's just annoying. For every ad that's stuck in my head, well, let's just say the vast majority of ads that are stuck in my head, I'd rather not have them be stuck in my head. I'd rather, they're just kind of annoying jingles that kind of are earworms, if you know what that is, a little thing that gets stuck in your head and goes round and round and round and you can't get rid of it. So there's sort of the territory. It's not up to me to tell you whether advertisement is good or bad, but what I would like to do is just sort of lay out the issues and show you some of the things that people have said on either side, and have you decide for yourself if, and probably more importantly, when advertising is good, and if and when advertising is bad. The main sort of thrust that I want to pursue, and we're going to pursue it from the beginning of advertising all the way up to the most current ads, is this idea of advertisements being next to the information, being around the information, and advertisements actually becoming the information. So you see here on the two sides of the screen, one that says ads are next to the information. That's a picture of the front page of a newspaper, and you can see that the very top of the newspaper is reserved for the name of the newspaper. But next down, in the next most important position on the page, right under the banner, is an advertisement. And then at the bottom of the page is an advertisement as well. Which of those advertisements do you think is worth more? Clearly the one on the top, right? So here we have sort of the ultimate in advertising surrounding the information. And we see this all the time on the web as well. And we'll get to the web in a little bit, right? The advertisements around the edges. And later we'll show how Google has sort of really owned that space, the advertising around the edges space. Okay, and then there's this trend for the advertising to be the information. You can see on the other side of the screen it says this awesome Apple combo ad. And so we have the Apple banner. You can see the Apple guy up in the top. But if you look closely, what looks to be sort of an editorial stuck there right next to the stories on the page is who? This is the Microsoft guy, right? So this is an ad for Apple that's kind of masquerading, and in this case not very convincingly masquerading, but masquerading as actual content. So we'll see those two threads happening over and over and over again throughout this presentation. We could begin back in the very beginning of print advertising, but I think we don't need to go any further than radio to see the first kind of interplay between this idea of, is it information or is it an advertisement? So let's listen to this clip.
Eversharp sponsors this program. We will now have a 3-second silence in their honor. Last week, a man made a very interesting test. This man took a certain razor and shaved one side of his face. He took another company's razor and shaved the other side. The left side came out smooth, clean, and perfectly magnificent. The right side was rough, ragged, and completely obnoxious. Now, because of business ethics, I can't tell you which razors he used.
Okay, so you can sort of see the ambivalence, meaning the guy who's the announcer is not quite sure whether he's on the side of the advertiser or not, right? He's sort of making fun of the advertiser at the same time that he's promoting the advertiser. And so that sort of ambiguity, is this guy on the team of the advertiser, or is this guy, on the team against the advertiser, is really played out in that show. And the advertiser actually probably doesn't care, because what the advertiser really wants is attention, and they want to be associated with that radio announcer who you already trust and already like, is a funny guy, et cetera, et cetera. So there's the beginning. Now let's look at the next kind of fence sitter between, is this an advertising or is this content? And now we'll look at early television.
The Flintstones has been brought to you by Winston, America's best-selling, best-tasting filter cigarette. It still tastes good like a cigarette should.
So that's the Flintstones. They were a real popular cartoon when I was a kid, and in fact, commercials using cartoon characters to advertise cigarettes were not unusual at all when I was a kid. Today that stuff is totally banned, and you can't do that sort of thing. You can't advertise tobacco hardly anywhere anymore. But back in the day, there was tobacco advertising everywhere. So this is another example of merging the content with the advertisement. So the standard commercial is television, 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 commercial break, television, 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 commercial break. But here we have the television content merging with the advertisement. Okay, so that's early television. Okay, now let's do sort of modern television, television that's around now. And the latest kind of twist in this idea of the ambiguity between content and advertisement comes in the idea of product placement, which has just kind of been all the rage. So let's take a look at some of the product placements on modern television.
Love it.
It's not product placement. I just like it.
What?
What?
So is this conflict any different on the web? Obviously not, right? The same kind of conflict and distinction between advertisement and content that's been playing out for a long time in other media is also going to play out exactly the same way on the web. And so let me give you sort of, the two pieces of the puzzle, and let's ask again, is it an ad or is it content? In this first example, let's look at a banner ad. This is a Mac banner ad, and the question is it content or is it an advertisement?
Hello, I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC. This is a bit cramped.
Very tight quarters.
The 728 by 90 format. It's an efficient but uncomfortable use of online media space. Feels like I'm back in my box.
Well, it's only for a few seconds, PC, till we get clicked.
Click now. I need to get back to work.
So I think you can see that this ad is playing the margin between being content itself. You want to watch it. You want to, it's cool, it's fun, and being advertisement. But it is not trying to merge with the content around it in the same way. It's still standing apart. So a classic banner ad completely stands apart. It's there on the side. It's there on the top, and we have sidebar ads that are maybe related to the content, but not really trying to be the content. This one sort of, plays the margin between actually being the content and being more interesting than the page that it's on. Now let's look at another one.
Hello, I'm a Mac. Here I come. Hang on.
What you got there,
Oh, it's just a little op-ed that I wrote, hot off the presses. Okay, there we go. You see, people are switching to Macs at an alarming rate. It's kind of a crisis. They're more popular than ever in homes, businesses, colleges. People need to know how much this hurts PCs, and they need to know it now. So, if you'll excuse me.
Wow, that's a great pose. It really captures your inner frustration.
I get a lot more where that came from. How about this one?
So this one clearly plays with the distinction between content and advertising, right? We have the banner ad on the top, and now what's the banner ad doing? It's talking to the ad on the side. The ad on the side is actually positioned as content. So it's happening on the web the same way as it's happening everywhere else. So let's summarize this idea. The idea is that advertisement wants your attention, advertisement wants to convince you of something, and advertisement wants you to do something or believe something that you hadn't done or believed before. And one way about that is to be associated with content. The other way about that is to become the content. And I think hopefully you've seen at this point that dichotomy, that difference between becoming and surrounding or being surrounded by content has been played out throughout the history of media, is continuing to be played out on the web. Google totally owns the space of those surrounding ads, the ads that appear in and around content. And in a moment, we'll talk a lot about how they actually do that, how that works technically and also economically. But what I want you to do first is take a look at how Google positions those ads, what they say about themselves. So as you're watching this video, start thinking about what kind of arguments is Google making about how their ads function and what the value of their ads are, and how are they, in fact, in this educational video, doing exactly what we've talked about before. They're making the content into the advertising.
Hi, I'm Nandu Janakaram, a product manager at Google. In this video series, we're talking about key aspects of Google business and how they affect you, our users. Today, I'd like to talk about ads. You know those text ads you sometimes see on your search results page? How do they get there, and what's their value to you? Well, people do web searches for three basic reasons. Entertainment, for instance, what's this morning's Hollywood gossip? Enlightenment, what did 19th century critics really think about Hamlet? And most frequently, information. Who can I call to deliver flowers to my mother right now in Mesa, Arizona? When you do a web search, you see ads on your results page only when we believe they further one of those three aims. If we can't find ads that will truly complement your regular search results, we won't show you any ads, period. But often ads really do offer meaningful information. Suppose, for instance, I do my search on Flower Shop Mesa, Arizona. Here's my results page. Google's search results are always ranked completely impartially by computer algorithm. Nobody can pay Google to improve their position on our results page. But advertisers can bid to have their ads placed up here and over here. Take Sarah, for example. Sarah owns a boutique flower shop in Mesa, Arizona. At any given moment, she wants her ads to reach the handful of people who are most interested in, well, flower shops in Mesa, Arizona. People like me. The moment I do my search is what we call a moment of relevance. When Sarah's ad appears on my search results page, it might very well be exactly the information I'm looking for. And if I click on it, I'll go straight to her website, and she'll pay Google for that click based on how much she bid to appear on that spot. The more that users like me vote for Sarah's ad with our clicks, the more likely Google is to give it a prominent placement in future moments of relevance. At every step of the way, our system is designed to reward advertisers for creating ads that people actually find useful. Like if I need to find a last-minute gift for my mom's birthday. Thanks for watching this video. I hope it gave you a better understanding about how Google advertising works.
So how did Google present themselves? How did they position their advertising service? Well, let me make a few points that I pulled out of watching that video myself. First of all, clearly they're saying that ads are valuable. Ads aren't this annoyance. Ads aren't this thing that, is trying to manipulate you. Ads are being valuable to you. And they present their argument for that. Ads further your aims. You have these aims for finding entertainment information, finding news information, or factual information. And then what they say, you also search for information. Well, of course, every search is for information. What they really kind of meant to say there is you search because you want to buy things. And when you want to buy things, those ads really work well. And so, they're obscuring a little bit the fact that ads really are about you buying stuff. At any rate, people want to buy stuff, and so when they want to buy stuff, there's this what they call moment of relevance. The moment of relevance is I'm searching for flowers in Tucson, and that's a moment of relevance. What that means is there's a person ready and waiting to make an economic transaction here, and that's a valuable point in time for anybody who's on the other end of that transaction. In the case they give here, the person selling flowers. So their positioning is that ads are valuable. Ads augment your search experience, and there's a moment of relevance, and that moment of relevance is probably better characterized as there's a time when the buyer is ready, and then if we serve an ad at that time, it's most likely to result in an economic transaction. Let's see. They notice also here how they personalize it. It's not just ads are helping companies meet consumers, ads are helping me meet Sarah. And so the argument here is that it's really about little people, it's really about little businesses. Finally, they say that they reward advertisers whose ads result in click-throughs. We've talked about click-throughs before, and so if a lot of people click through to Sarah's ad, it's unclear from this what exactly happens. I suspect that Sarah's ad gets served more. That's true. I also suspect that Sarah's going to get charged more, right? Because they're going to optimize their transaction with this Sarah, the flower shop owner, and theoretically, Sarah's going to benefit too because more people will click through to her site, more people will order flowers from her, and everybody's happy. People get to buy flowers. Google gets more money from Sarah, and Sarah gets more money from people buying the flowers. Well, we've looked at Google's positioning of their ad service. Now let's look at how it actually works. It has really a few different components. And the first component is to sell words from the index to advertisers, to companies who want to be associated with that word. And I think you have all you need to understand that in as detailed and technical a terms as you want. We won't go too technically into it, but you get the basic idea, right? The Google index is billions and billions of words. Well, not billions, but certainly hundreds of thousands to millions of distinct words, and people search for those words. People search for those words, and when they search for those words, they might want to have your advertisement come up. When they search for flowers, and now, you know, we got to add the geographic part into here too, right? When they search for flowers and they're in Tucson, Arizona, I would like my flower shop ad to come up. So how much am I willing to pay for that? Well, I think as was sort of hinted at in the video that we saw earlier from Google, it depends. It depends on who else wants those words, right? So it's in Google's interest to start a bidding war and say who wants to be at the top of the results when someone searches for flowers in Tucson, and whoever's going to pay us the most will get to be the top. If you bid the second most, you get to be down there down from the first result. So it's sort of a stock exchange of index words. So now you can see kind of the value of the Google index. The Google index shows all the words that people can search for, and now Google can sell those words, and in fact sell those words to the highest bidder for the purpose of placing ads around the page. So that's part one. So that works for the Google search pages, but how come Google ads show up on a bunch of other people's pages? That's step number two. In step number two, Google really basically gives away words to people who have content. So if for example, I'm a website that specializes in flowers and I talk all about the different kinds of flowers, I don't sell flowers, I'm just a flower information site. I know that I'm a magnet for people who are interested in flowers, right? And when they're on flowers, maybe they want to buy flowers. And so I'm going to have the word flowers or buy flowers or purchase flowers or flower shop or whatever word it is that I want to have Google associate with me, and Google will give me a bunch of ads that, as far as it can see, are as well targeted towards the people who are coming to my page as possible. And I get little ads. And basically the way it works technically is I drop a little piece of content onto my HTML pages. That little piece of content goes and contacts Google and gets the latest ads, and those ads come up as maybe little pictures, or they come up as little text ads, and you click through, and when you click, Google sees that you've clicked so that they know how to charge for that click, and you're then routed to the advertiser. Okay, so they're selling words to the advertisers. They're giving the words away to the content providers so that the content providers can provide targeted ads on their website. And then the final thing is they split the money. I'm this flower website, and people are coming to me because I'm a flower expert, but where I'm not merely making any money from that, right? They're coming to me because I'm a flower expert, and then they click away, and what did I get for it, right? So instead, how I'm going to monetize my value on the web is I'm going to become an advertiser, and I'm going to do what everybody else does. In a way, it's really kind of funny because what Google's doing is it's allowing that same theory of I monetize my website by providing targeted ads. It's giving that to the masses. And so it's allowing anybody, no matter how small or big their website is, to play that same game. The game of eyeballs for advertisers. The more eyeballs I get, the more I'm valuable to advertisers, and Google is providing the platform for that. So that's really the long view of this, is that In the end, Google becomes the advertising operating system. An operating system like Windows or Mac OS or whatever is the kind of below all the other people. And there's the Google business model. Not only do I own the index of all the words that can serve as magnets for advertising, but I also own the rollout of the advertising. I also own the way that people put ads on their website, no matter how big or small their website is. Pretty neat. I mean, that's a classic example of Google making money by getting underneath. In this case, they're getting underneath the advertising process itself. For these ads, remember we have two kinds of ads, the ones that are the content and the ones that surround the content or are next to the content. This is a system for getting under the next to the content ads. And you can imagine why it works so well that way, because there are small little ads that can go on any page having to do with flowers, and if somebody signs up to be part of the flower keyword, and by the way, and as many people as want can sign up to use the flower keyword on their websites in order to draw in ads, but a limited number of people can sign up to be the first, or only one person can sign up to be the first on the list of ads for a particular geographic location. Okay, so in the end, what Google is striving to do, and has pretty successfully done to date, is to become the operating system under advertisements. So in addition to providing the tools for the advertisers to create their ads and the tools for the people who are going to host the advertisers to draw those ads in, Google just has a whole host, and on this picture here you only see the beginning of it, a whole host of tools for you to analyze how well that's working, for you to see statistics, for you to keep track of how much money you're making from their service, et cetera, et cetera. So not only are they providing the business model, they're also providing the technology model. And we'll come back in a little while and talk a little bit more about Google's play to be not only under advertisements, but to be under your entire web experience or your entire computer experience. So that's Google and the idea of side-by-side ads, ads that are not the information but are next to the information. But Google is not unaware of the idea of having the advertisements become the content. I just don't think they have it figured out. They certainly don't have it monetized quite yet, but let's look in this little clip here and hear a guy from Google talk about that.
So I'm Andy Stack. I'm a product manager at YouTube. And the main message I wanted to deliver today is a message to create content, not commercials. That brands and retailers should develop a content strategy, not necessarily an advertising strategy, and then look to see what type of content works well within their community, and spend money on what is tested and what works in that area. Related to that, content itself is very rich in changing by definition. So we shouldn't be held to old ideas as to what content is. Content could be new video that we shoot. It could be curated content. It could be a lot of existing video content that is actually mixed together. Many different forms, many different ways to create content. But underlying it all is that we're all storytellers, and a content strategy helps ultimately for people to sell brands, not brands to sell brands.
Okay, so the final link. We have this. We have the idea of ads side by side. We have the idea of the ads becoming content. And the thing that now has become possible and is really the next big move, I think, in advertisement is to link it to the final buy, the final purchase. So you have a little clip from an article here. You can read the rest of the article if you download the slides and click on the URL. But in essence, what this guy, Tim O'Reilly, who's a big publisher, kind of a new age publisher in computer books, and kind of a pundit, kind of an itinerant pundit, what he's talking about is that final piece of the puzzle, right? Advertisers want your attention. Advertisers want to convince you of something, and advertisers want you to do something. Well, until pretty recently, they could do the first two, but they couldn't directly do the third one, right? You're right. You watch a commercial for Coca-Cola, and there's no button at the end of the commercial that says "Buy Coca-Cola." But now there could be, right? And this idea of converging all of these things so that the transaction, and one to watch here actually is Amazon, because Amazon has the ability to sell anything to anybody, right? We haven't talked much about Amazon, but Amazon is a great example of someone who wants to get under every economic transaction. That's becoming more and more possible. So Tim O'Reilly uses the example of the App Store, where I have a need for something, I search, the App Store that's associated with your phone, right? For either getting Android apps or getting iPhone apps. You search for what you want, right? Kind of like a Google, you search for what you want. You come to the place where you can see what you want, and then you buy it, you download it. Oftentimes it's free, but not always, right? There's a little purchase there. And he's saying that model's going to extend to all purchases and all electronic purchases, and why wouldn't it, right? I mean, from the advertiser's standpoint, why wouldn't you have a buy button right there at the end of the advertisement? I've convinced you, now buy. Especially in this situation, like Google is presenting, this moment of relevance, which is the moment where someone's ready to buy. I want flowers, I'm in Tucson, I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't ready to buy those flowers. I am ready to buy those flowers, now give me the buy button. And have it automatically debit my card, and away we go, the flowers are on their way. So let's circle back around now to that Minority Report clip that I showed you in the beginning. Remember, the clip showed targeting of advertisements. It showed coming up with a unique idea of a person, which allows you to target the advertisement. It showed that eye scanner thing, and it showed the personalization of those ads. So that's a kind of a cool vision of the future, and as I said before, a lot of that is possible now. We target ads all the time. We can identify you in various ways. We don't have these cool remote scanners, but that's not so far in the distance. We have all the display technology. Certainly we could create displays that are as good as the ones we had in the movie. But what might be missing? What sort of didn't they talk about in that Minority Report advertisement that I think is really kind of critical for the future of advertising, and actually for the present of advertising for that matter? The first thing is this idea of ads becoming the information. Notice those ads were really still kind of next to ads. They weren't content themselves. They were really straight on ads. There's a Guinness thing. It could very well have been a commercial, and in fact they really were commercials. They just happened to be fancy commercials. So the idea of the content, the ad becoming the content, was not really shown in that vision of the future. Another thing that was not shown in that vision of the future was a little bit better targeting. Right? The kind of targeting we do now, this moment of relevance, is really important, and it's really kind of the key to understanding what advertisers really want. They want to get you at that moment when you're maximally ready to do the thing. So the one in Minority Report, basically just took a commercial and pasted the guy's name into the commercial, and so it knew who he was, so it pasted his name in. Very, very far from the kinds of real specific targeting to what you need now. Like, for example, in Minority Report, it might have read that he was out of, or he had a refrigerator full of Guinness, but he was out of wine. And so not a Guinness ad, but a wine ad, because it knows that he's just about out of wine. Right? That kind of targeting is not far off at all. And that's where every moment becomes a moment of relevance, because the advertisers totally know what state of need you happen to be in at the moment. Like, my car just went into the shop, and so I'm going to see lots of car ads, for example, something like that. Okay, and then the final thing, and to me this is maybe the most startling thing that they left out, was this idea of the final link. It's not just, hey, John Anderton, you might be ready for a Guinness. It's, hey, John Anderton, want a Guinness? Blink your eyes, and a Guinness will show up when you turn the corner. Right? That's sort of the final link, or the final act of actually purchasing the thing, is also not shown in the Minority Report. However, it's Hollywood, and they went with the cool thing, and so we can't really blame them for leaving out some stuff that we might now be able to think about.